Hey, lovelies. Thanks for coming out, everybody. I'm going to tell you a little story about the most important news story of 2012. I first heard about the Great Balboa the Great Balboa Park midnight water gun fight of 2012 from an acquaintance on his lunch break. His name is Xavier. He's a young black man of impeccable dress and searching curiosity who I knew to be involved in several tech ventures, but whose actual job I have never learned. He asked me if I planned on going, and when I admitted that I hadn't even heard about it, his eyes lit up, and he went on to describe the concept. A flash mob style cultural happening organized out of nothing but a single Facebook invitation circulated organically through digital culture. Now, Xavier did not give a toss about water guns or youthful regression. No, he was excited for the opportunity to witness a communal celebration forming on its own accord here in San Diego. The kind of utopian gesture that social media was blazing trails for. The kind of unstructured jubilee that you hear reported in cities known more for ingenuity than weather. He promised to forward me on the invitation, and true to his word, a notice popped up on my screen in the time it took him to return to his computer. About 300 people had signaled that they would assemble, as directed, by the Great Fountain on Saturday, August 11th. At the time I signed up, it was only the beginning of July. The event page suggested that participants dress up for the occasion. The more outlandish, the better. The online invitation was removed after the event, but to my memory, there were explicit instructions not to bring water balloons on account of the litter they would create, or to go near the koi pond. What struck me the most about the invite's text, or the comments that were made to it, was the total absence of any irony. It was a rare showing of sincerity in the era of cynical snipe. By the time the prescribed date rolled around, nearly 2,000 people had RSVP'd, half of them in the affirmative. I picked up my friends and parked by the great lot of the Great Fountain minutes before the announced kickoff of 11:30 p.m. Only a scant few groupings of 20-somethings were milling about at the time, and they were quiet with the anxiety of disappointed expectations. And then a man whose physique made me regret having eaten anything, ever, especially outside of a gym, strode past me in a Speedo, like an angel in Freddie Mercury's heaven. And I recognized him from the event page as its organizer, Ken St. Pierre. He's purty. Ken announced that the starting point had been relocated near the reflecting pool because the Great Fountain was down for repairs. Pass it on, he called. Clusters of people numbering in the low hundreds had gathered on the botanical garden side of the lily pond, their demographics cast from a very wide net. We had SDSU frat boys in camouflage, several Olympic swim teams worth of statuesque gay men in Speedos. There were Filipino dudes from Mira Mesa formed into fire teams. Video games had paid off. There's a few Muslim girls even in headscarves, one very heavily accessorized Jack Sparrow lookalike, a small army of men and women dressed up for kind of a casual Comic-Con feel, and then just lots and lots and lots of ordinary people dressed totally ordinarily. Friend one asked a man standing in a group that were wearing similar grease paint if he was on a team. There are no teams here, only enemies. By midnight, the crowd had grown by hundreds and would continue to grow over the next hour towards 1,000. And then at 1:15, without fanfare or warning, an air horn was blown, and the scene erupted into the stuff of adolescent fantasy. Oh, everybody began dashing, nowhere in particular. Screaming, laughing, just blurs of white teeth grinning in the darkness. Honestly, and I say this truthfully without irony, I have never seen so many people smiling for such a sustained amount of time without the aid of alcohol, the mar of violence, or the motives of corporate sponsorship. Now, the first problem to arise was predictable. Water guns. They do run dry fast. And while several people had thought ahead and brought jugs to refill themselves by, the vast majority had not. And the principal preoccupation, of course, was to keep the fun going. So figures began hunching along the pond's edge at regular intervals, dipping plastic toys between the reeds and the lily pads. Somebody might have said something, and I think I saw someone do, but it became common practice almost immediately. I saw a middle-aged woman shout at a teenage boy to stop throwing water balloons unless he was going to pick them up afterwards. And then the boy hesitated until she moved right around a column and then began lobbing artillery with impressive accuracy wherever the crowd had grown densest. Some adolescents jumped into a small recessed portion of the pond, but my friend number 2 got them out with a very practiced teacher's tone. And then she gave up once a few grown-ass men followed suit. This is why you need to designate who the adults are, she said. These are the ones who are going to fuck it up for everyone. Those among the crowd prone to excess made their presence known around 12:40 p.m. A tall, gangly man appeared to be living out a fantasy in the stormtrooper helmet of a Star Wars clone, dominating the night with a kind of high-pressure hand pump that just disgorged its entire load by the half-gallon in a single deluge. And then he rhythmically dipped the gun into the pond and sucked up another shot and then released it again, and then again, and then again. A college-age guy in a jersey dispensed with water guns altogether and used a mop bucket he'd apparently brought for the purpose to just douse entire groups with pond water. Another man, 10 years his senior, his waterlogged shorts sliding right off his skinny ass, reappropriated the igloo cooler he brought for the same purpose. It had looked like a good idea. A college-age guy in a jersey two couples had taken to making out in the pond, foregoing play for romance among the reeds, and I wondered if they would contract dysentery. And then a shirtless, skinny, bespectacled fellow floated around them in a sort of alligator impersonation. His eyes, the only part of him that were visible above the waterline, with a lily pad resting on his head like Mr. Toad's yarmulke. He waited until a girl had stooped to refill her gun before he raised his own and shot her in the face. The water ran in the gutters at a volume equal to what a light rain might cause. And the enterprising among the crowd who wouldn't raid the lily pond were stooping to refill their guns out of the stream. Oh, that's going to be nasty with all the dirt and oil they're scooping up, said a man in a turquoise thong. The crowd began to thin out around 1 a.m., and what I partially interpreted as disapproval of the misbehaving minority. And if the destruction being wrought by these very few, and I will stress only a few, was not drawing the appropriate attention of the mob, it was because of their being lodged within the context of 1,000 people, well-behaved of their own accord, and without needing any oversight to speak of, for the record. And then around 1:30 a.m., the air horns sounded again in a long, sustained blast and lassoed with this invisible force the remaining hundreds into one close mass, cheering and firing into the air. Someone began shouting, "USA! USA!" fueled by what sounded like Olympic medal fever, and the crowd immediately took up the chant in celebration of the freedom that within 24 hours would lead to their complete condemnation by society as they knew it. As my friends and I walked back to my car, a police helicopter passed overhead and then kind of slowed and seemed to hesitate in its trajectory and then began circling widely within view of the lily pond and the remaining revelers. If a helicopter can look confused, this one did. I turned to friend number 2 and asked her how shocked I was, I told her, that not a single cop or security guard had shown up in the entire 2.5 hours we'd been there. I asked her what she thought would be more surprising if the SDPD didn't know about a gathering of that enormity, one that lasted that long and had been advertised an entire month in advance, or if they had known but had just chosen not to intervene. They had to have known. There's no way. Well, maybe they didn't think the crowd could control. They didn't think they could control a crowd that big. Friend number one offered. No, of course they did. Look at who was there. It's just a bunch of pussy little bitches like us. If they told us to go home, everyone would have shuffled their feet and gone, okay. But I'll tell you this right now. If one asshole accidentally killed one fish, everybody is going to be in a lot of trouble, and everything good about tonight will be forgotten. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Accordingly, the next morning's news cycle was dominated by the San Diego TV news community's waspyish harbingers of doom. CBS's local San Diego affiliate won the prize for both hyperbole and fabricating hysteria and shitty reporting through the knit-browed, pearl-clutching Shannon Handy and Angelique Lizardi, who announced, in turn, that they'd spoken to several people, because that's journalism, who had told them that all the fish were dead or expected to die. Now, it was Katie Orr, the Metro reporter for KPBS, a real news organization. She was the first to correct them by reporting accurately that, in fact, no koi had died. But even after she did so, CBS not only failed to correct their stories, they re-syndicated the bullshit off to their affiliates from Los Angeles to Virginia, proving, once again, that CBS San Diego is to journalism what the orange dusting on a Cheeto is to actual cheese. Now, when I ran this article in San Diego City Beat, investigative reporter Dave Moss, my friend, aptly phrased the reaction it received as, received online, where you can comment, as the progressive equivalent of how conservatives would respond if the more conservative Union Tribune had run a story about an illegal immigrant raping a white woman. Calls for the waterboarding and caning of the organizers and participants flooded the comments section. Once it was revealed that Ken St. Pierre had worked on the LGBT Pride Parade and was, gasp, a gay, several internet commenters jumped on the opportunity to blame the entire incident on the homosexuals. One commenter on CBS's site anonymously posted, "Was this sponsored by the gay community?" I'm sorry, I'm Southern, that's not good. They're not satisfied wearing their boas and garter belts while flaunting common sense morality. Now they have to tear the parks apart with their ruckus behavior. Ruckus. Take your whips and chains and stay in Hillcrest. But if they did, how would I ever find a nice apartment? It was after 3 days of unethically bad follow-up reporting by local news affiliates and column after column of eye-rolling, nostril-flaring, vitriolic rage by the San Diego community, many of whom I knew as my friends and the spouses of my friends, that I finally found a righteous indignation of my very own, and it is here that I will now stop talking to you as a reporter in favor of the personal. Think of me now as your friend. See, back in March of this year, when 14-year-old Richard Carrillo caught a bullet in the head when he was walking through the Mount Hope neighborhood, none of the people I saw losing their shit over the Lily Pond fiasco said one goddamn word. Back when I reported on how Anastasio Hernandez Rojas was tasered to death by the Border Patrol while laying in a prone position in 2010, none of these same people could be bothered to type out a response online, much less march down the street with torches and pitchforks in hand. But when a bunch of careless, stupid kids startled a couple of expensive fish, at long last, I witnessed my generation and its media wake from their slumber and announce to the world exactly what they would and would not stand for. And so of all the characters in this little, quaint human drama, it's to these people who picked this to be their crowning moment of rage that I choose to say, go fuck yourselves.
Justin Hudnall, everybody. All right, all you guys, we're going to take a 10-minute break here, so go get another drink.